Good morning, Nicoya, and welcome to the Low Carb Paleo Show.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
It's our pleasure, always. Especially with beautiful women. We always enjoy this even more.
Thank you.
It's just me being French.
Very.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Mark. How are you today?
Wonderful, thank you. Can't complain at all.
And?
Well, there's no point complaining, is there? No one listens.
You always, I have my joke, he has his own jokes. Okay, Nicoya, I tasted your wonderful Rising Springs water at Paleo FX 2019 and loved it. So we invited you to talk about it. Now, one might say it's only water, right? How can it be special? Well, hopefully you can educate us.
Yes, I hope so.
Starting with your background, can you tell us about your professional background before Rising Springs?
Of course, yes. I've had a few chapters. I became a home birth midwife in my 20s, and that was an incredible career that I am forever grateful that I had. I also have opened Eco Boutique and catered to sustainable fabrics and manufacturing. And I've been an advocate and worked with nonprofits focused on children and water for the last 15 years. Primarily with water, it was with the Waterkeeper Alliance, who is an international organization, an incredible organization that I hope everybody will Google after this and look into. And they advocate for for fishable, swimmable, and drinkable waters. And then about 5 years ago began my Rising Springs journey.
Okay, so how did that happen, the whole Rising Springs story or business?
Yeah, so because of that long history of water advocacy, when the source, the Rising Springs source came up for purchase, somebody involved with the purchase reached out to my family who had done a lot of work in water advocacy to see if we were willing to purchase the springs or interested in purchasing the springs. And of course we were. And we really had no strategy other than just stewarding this incredible source of water and protecting it. And it had formerly been packaged under the name Trinity, so we knew that there was a group of people that really wanted to be reconnected with the water source. But we had a lot of questions and meditating to do on if that felt right for us to start a new business and package this water for consumers. And if so, what would be the most sustainable way to do that? So that became kind of a few years of research into packaging and different, business ideas, opportunities, until we kind of landed on our direct-to-consumer model that we have right now.
Okay. What is your current role at Rising Springs?
I am a co-founder and my husband is the CEO. So we work together, from that level in strategy and whatnot. But most of the hours of my day are spent in marketing. So I'm the brand manager and I do everything from packaging to Instagram to events. And we're a small startup company. So when I say that, I mean, I actually attend the events and post to the Instagram and work with the marketing. I have a partner in marketing, our marketing director. And so, really my job is to make sure that the brand Rising Springs is expressing the integrity of the source and of our values and is transparent in what we communicate to the world.
Cool. So some people will say, water is water, so what's the big deal? What makes your water special?
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing, water, right? Because, you fill 2 glasses of water, say one from a tap and one from the most amazing, purest water source in the world. You put them side by side and you couldn't tell which is which. And I think that's one of the things that makes this, this issue that we're facing a lot more complicated. And so, basically the way I see it, there's natural spring water. That's water. Everything else is processed water. And that's the differentiation. And I can't wait for a time when we walk down the aisle at the supermarket and those two things are separated out. Just like they are, in the produce aisle, you've got organic apples, conventional apples. That's how I believe it should be. So what makes the rising spring source, different spring waters are different because of the geology in which they rise. So, it's kind of this magical combination of what exists beneath the Earth's surface. And we talk about terroir with wine because it affects what the roots pull up from the earth affects the different taste of the grape. It affects the taste of the grapes and therefore the taste of the wine. Well, water is even more affected by terroir because it's actually existing underneath the Earth's surface with the geology. And so the different attributes that Rising Springs has that separates it is that it's high in silica. It has naturally occurring fluoride. It has a naturally occurring pH of 9.4, so it's alkaline. It actually has a redox potential of negative 144 to negative 150. So that means it can act as an antioxidant. And that's, we've tested that to be stable, absolutely, for a week, which is incredible for an antioxidant. It also is deuterium depleted, which is something that we're more recently talking about as far as how it affects water and our health. And so it's got a deuterium level of 135 with it, which is efficacious for health and energy.
All right, so we'll get back to some of these a little later. What is, can you give us like the technicals about your source, that is how deep it is, how old it is, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, so the water has been dated at 16,000 years old. And so if you can imagine how pristine the world was 16,000 years old before we had all of these common day contaminants, toxins, etc.
I remember, I was there.
Yeah. I can only imagine, but I imagine it to be just a gorgeous place. And so the water itself is 16,000 years old. It's in an aquifer 2.2 miles deep in the Sawtooth National Forest. And it's protected by dense granite called a batholith. And it is also protected by its outward pressure. There's tremendous pressure. And at the surface, it's 138 degrees. And so you can only imagine how hot it is 2.2 miles deep. So that pressure pushes it up through a fissure, and it travels 2.2 miles to the Earth's surface, most of its journey being through quartz crystals. So it picks up the silica from the quartz crystals on its journey upward. And then it rises in our source house in Idaho.
Right. I'd love to go visit.
We would love to have you visit. We love people to come and visit and see it. And it's actually such a magical place to be. It's one of the most spiritual places I've been, because you come and you sit and this water is naturally rising in this source house, and above is this skylight, and the sun is meeting this water source that it hasn't seen for 16,000 years, and you get to witness that.
Nice. Sounds good. Yeah, a friend of mine is moving to Idaho, so it'll give me another excuse to come and visit.
Yes.
So, how, what you were saying about processed water, I relate to the food side of thing, because there's food, as in fresh food, organic, so on and so forth, and everything else, packaged, processed, fast food, So there's definitely a difference. I understand that, but I never really, most of us don't really pay attention to that. It's like water, it's coming out of the faucet, great. If you're a little more sophisticated, you have a water filter to take out most of the chemicals and poisons in the water. So how, and you just told us the water comes out pretty warm, right? So is there a cooling period? How do you process your water from the source to the package?
Yeah, so it's not processed. its journey goes from the source house. It goes through stainless steel pipes, the gravity fed, to our packaging plant about 20 feet away from the source. It does go into a cooling tank because it needs to cool down before it can be packaged into the 5-liter boxes. The only filter that it goes through is a 22 point micron filter, which is basically like a screen that would pick up any chip of a rock or anything that might come through. But that's the only filter. And I hesitate to even call that filtering, because what we speak to, at least in America, when we speak to filtering, is a much more aggressive process. And that actually can disrupt the structure of the water.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about your quality standards? Is there some kind of certification, or is it, how do you control the quality?
So we test the source regularly. We test with the state of Idaho to be compliant with state standards. We run tests in our own plant on scheduled intervals. And then, of course, we test every batch of Rising Springs that we package. We also have tested with the University of Michigan, which they have a mass spectrometer, which can test the water down to parts per quadrillion, which is the smallest particle that can be tested that we know of so far. And so that tests to 0 contaminants at parts per quadrillion. There is no other water that we know of in the United States that tests pure down to that particle. And that's been consistent. And the water, basically on all of the things I talked about, the alkalinity, the redox potential, all of those things are pretty consistent in our testing throughout this water's history of being tested, back when it was packaged under the name Trinity, as well as now. And so because it's just coming from this deep aquifer that's this 16,000 years old, it's just a consistent water that's never contaminated by any other groundwater, or there's no other environmental contaminant comes in contact with this water. So it's a very consistent water. And, we tested some other waters that would maybe be our competitors, or that we were curious about, as well as different filtered waters. And all of those waters had contaminants to parts per million, either being phthalates, which are, from plastics, herbicides, neurotoxins, different man-made contaminants that not in maybe one occurring. It doesn't go over the required standards. It meets standards, but those together are not really communicated what the effect of those contaminants together in water how they would affect you.
God knows there's a lot of factors that pollute our water nowadays.
There really is.
Not just pesticides and so on, but also nowadays even antidepressants and antibiotics and
hormones.
All sorts of chemicals, hormones, everything that get into the water through, and it gets into the leaching. And don't get me started with fracking and all these other things.
Let's not get started.
Yeah.
But Waterkeepers Alliance is a good one to look into for all of those things.
Right. I'm curious about one thing. You label your water as a mineral supplement. Can you explain that, and what are the benefits of?
Yes, we label Rising Springs as a natural mineral supplement because it has efficacious minerals in it. And as a natural mineral supplement, we don't have to process or disinfect the water. We can just leave it in its whole natural, pure state. By regulations in America to meet bottled water standards, state regulations, waters have to be disinfected in some way. And we definitely don't want to do that. There's no need to do that with Rising Springs. And so we're able to just leave it as it comes out of the ground as a natural mineral supplement. Right.
So what are the benefits of the minerals in the water to our bodies?
So silica it's high in silica and bioavailable silica. So your body can easily absorb the silica that's present. Silica, as most of us know, is great for hair, skin, nails. But it's also, it's a building block of collagen. So it's also very important for the connective tissue in your body. And it is also being studied for being able to help remove heavy metals from the brain to kind of slow the onset of Alzheimer's and dementia. And those are newer studies, so those aren't claims we're making, but it's a very interesting mineral that is very beneficial for our body. And, we have a lot of the reviews that people send us, speak to noticing a difference in their hair texture, or their nails. And so I'm always feeling like, wow, if you can see those benefits outward facing, then what are those benefits on the inside, that it's strengthening your connective tissue on the inside.
So that's your secret on how to look like 25 years old?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about another component, fluoride now. Fluoride has a bad name out there. I know that the city of Austin puts fluoride in our water, and that's a big no-no for me. Tell us about the natural fluoride and how it affects us or at all, and how it helps us.
So, really to me, what is the big issue in the United States is fluoridation. Not necessarily the element of fluoride. And so fluoridation, putting this fluoride into our water, that fluoride is from industrial waste, from the production of aluminum or maybe fertilizers. So beginning there, you've got a very questionable substance that you're putting into our water. The other thing that's really important about fluoride is that its charge wants to connect with another molecule. And so it's to stabilize it. And so what's in your water is really important, because what it connects to is really important. So in a water source that has different contaminants in it, the fluoride can connect to those and bring that into your body. In a source like Rising Springs, where there's no contaminations for the fluoride to connect to, and so there's calcium, so it connects to calcium and makes calcium fluoride and some sodium fluoride. Those substances are what I feel is much better for your body than the fluoridation. And so, it is a mineral that you can get too much of. And so we do have serving sizes of, 22 ounces a day. But it's good for oral health, teeth, gums. We've had some interesting reviews lately of people having had oral surgeries and rinsing with Rising Springs and feeling like that has been significant in their healing process.
So that's so the claim, because you see a lot of those claims, especially in toothpaste, that fluoride is good for you. This kind of fluoride is actually good for you, but not necessarily the industrial fluoride.
Yes, and what makes it more difficult is that there's no studies done on naturally occurring fluoride. So all of these requirements, FDA standards, everything, that is what is being tested on fluoridation. And so there aren't standalone tests on naturally occurring fluoride. I think if they did do those tests, and Rising Springs would love to do those tests, but those kinds of tests are quite expensive. I think you'd find very different results.
Right. So, so we need to be clear, to make clear to our listeners that there's a big difference between naturally occurring fluoride and, so to speak, added fluoride.
Correct.
And one is a poison, the industrial type, and the other one is good for us.
Correct.
Okay, so let's talk about electrolytes. I understand your water contains electrolytes. Which one and how does it help?
It contains 51 milligrams per liter of sodium and I think 82 of carbonate and bicarbonate.
And how is that good to us?
I don't actually know the answer to that.
Okay, at least you're honest. I mean, you know, you look at these, look at these horrible drinks out there that claim to have electrolytes, but what good are electrolytes to us and our body? How does it work?
Well, to be quite honest, we aren't a naturally occurring. We don't have high electrolytes. So electrolytes isn't something that we kind of lead with, or that I know a ton about and can speak to.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to need to educate myself a little bit on that and follow up with you.
Well, if it's not,
well,
we do.
I mean, it's in there, so it's important. It's just not something that I can, there's all these different scientific things that I can speak to. That's not one.
Right.
I mean, hydration. Okay. Yeah.
So moving along, the pH of your water is 9.4, which makes it alkaline. Can you tell us about the benefits of water being alkaline versus acidic, which a lot of bottled water are actually acidic?
Yes, they are. So one of the main benefits that we've received feedback from alkaline water is helping with acid reflux. That's, something that I think can be solidly stated as a benefit from alkaline water. Beyond that, there's a lot of information on alkalinity in water out there. And so kind of where I go is that our bodies are acidic and we live in an acidic environment. And we all know that disease flourishes in an acidic environment. So by drinking alkaline water and hopefully balancing some of that acidity out, we are creating, less of a friendly environment for disease.
I've noticed in one of the videos you sent us or sent me is that there was this young lady that was doing a report on alkaline water, because it's the big thing now, alkaline water. And it turns out that, first of all, one company owns all of the different brands, and they all basically handled or processed, if you will, exactly the same way, which is basically they filter water and then they add something to it.
Yes.
To make it alkaline. Yours is naturally alkaline.
Yes.
Can you explain where the alkalinity, whether that's a word or not, comes from in your source?
It's just naturally occurring in the environment that the water is in. The geological environment that is more alkaline than acidic. And so that's it. And the interesting thing about those manufactured pHs is that they aren't stable. So a lot of them, you can set alkalinity at 8.6, and then as soon as it is set, it can start losing its stability, because it's a manufactured alkalinity. It's not naturally occurring. So my question with all of these processed things that they, strip the water of everything good and then add back in these different processes is, how stable are those, and how do they really, affect your body once you have consumed them? Are they strong enough to have these benefits, or do they just kind of lose their strength?
It's kind
I don't know the answer to that.
Kind of similar how they strip wheat of all of its vitamins and minerals, and then they add it back on the back end to make it healthy, quote unquote healthy, right?
Right.
So they process everything out, and then when they make the bread, they add this and that to make it healthier. Yeah.
Right. And so now you have a lot of people who can't eat that form of wheat. They can't process it, and we have such a higher incident of people, being gluten intolerant because of that very thing. And so I would think the same with the water. You're going to, take this water, strip it all out, process it back in. Is that really beneficial? And can it be ultimately harmful in ways that we don't know, as opposed to this natural, this water made from the earth, that what we have been drinking since time began. Or we began.
Yeah. A friend of mine has been trying to convince me for years to drink the kind of water he's basically selling. It's a multi-level marketing.
Right.
And I've always suspected it was one of those processed water. And so I never went for it, but I definitely drink your water, for sure.
Yay.
Now we're going into something a little bit out there, and I'm counting on you to explain it in a rational way. One of the claims that I've noticed on your website is that your water contains crystal energy. Can you explain that?
Yeah. So there is some matter that has an electrical charge, and crystals are one of those matters, and it's a piezoelectric charge. And so under pressure, this pressure of the water rising against the crystals, it admits that piezoelectric charge into the water. And so where one goes with that is now, there's not a lot of scientific testing after that. We know that that is in the water, and along with the silica and the other benefits of the crystals.
How does that relate to? I know a lot of people believe in crystal. They hang crystal, or they have these lamps with crystal and everything. How does that relate to that?
Well, for me, if you're one that believes or is attracted to that kind of thinking, then I would go to that this water, that the pressure, the heat, and the time that this water spends in this crystal environment is going to have a much higher charge than if you drop a crystal in a glass of water and drink it.
Okay. Maybe Mark has further questions on that later on. Moving along, let's talk about your packaging. I know you try to make it so that the water stays pure. So you have the outer packaging, which is recycled cardboard, I guess?
Correct.
And the inside is a plastic film, so to speak, or a plastic bag. What is the plastic bag made of, and does it react at all with the water?
That's a good question. One of the biggest questions we asked ourselves was about packaging. And we initially thought we would go to market in glass, but the environmental footprint on shipping glass, both to the plant and then filled with water back to the consumer, was really high. So this packaging that we found has the lightest environmental footprint. The outer is the cardboard that can be recycled curbside. And is made from recycled materials. And the inner is actually 2 layers of plastic, PBA, PPS, PPF free, as well as phthalate free. And so we have tested the water in the plastic sitting for, since our company began, and there is absolutely no leaching of the plastic into the water. And as well as we sent our water to the University of Michigan for that max spec machine to test the water, and both in a glass container and in our packaging, and they come out identical with no traces of any plastic. When we first started, the plastic was recyclable at more locations than it is now. Things have changed in the US as far as recycling is concerned. So that's one of the issues that we're dealing with. We invite and encourage our consumers to send those bags as well as the spouts back to us, because we work with a company in Boise to upcycle those bags and spouts into synthetic biodiesel. We are continually looking for different packaging options and will be coming out with a different option in 2020.
Okay. Can you give us an exclusive or a hint?
Yes, it will be in glass. And we are not sure yet. That won't probably not come out right away in a direct to consumer, because again, we're challenged with that shipping issues. So retail and on premise.
Okay. So Currently, you sell only through your website, is that right? No retail, right?
No, we do. We actually, if you go to our website, you can click on a little tab that will show you where we are in retail. And so we're in Erewhon in LA, and we are in Boise at the Boise Co-op in a couple locations, and then in the Wood River Valley, which is up by the Ketchum Sun Valley area, in a few locations. And it was important to us that people that lived close to the source had access to the source.
Yeah. So people can come and refill their containers?
Yes, they can. They can refill their personal containers. At first I was saying...
Or maybe swap.
No, we don't do that yet because we're with the glass. You mean? Yeah, no, yes. We're not to that yet. That would be great. But we do invite people to come and fill their personal containers if they want to come to the source for free.
Okay.
That's always an option.
Oh, cool. We talked about containers. How do you ship your water?
Just from our door to yours via FedEx.
FedEx, okay.
Yeah, it's in 2 of these 5-liter boxes. Right. So 10-liter shipment in one package arrives to you. And so that's a subscription that we feel like just kind of like your supplements or anything that you're adding into your health and wellness, that you want your water to arrive on a regular basis. So you can receive it once a month in the 10 liters or every 2 weeks, and you can increase the quantity as you feel for yourself or for your family.
Mm. This may sound a little strange, but is your water perishable?
That's a great question.
Is there a time limit on how long you can keep the water?
Yeah. I think we have a shelf life of 18 months just because we needed to pick one. And we also are a new company, so we wanted to run our own tests. And so, from the beginning of when we incorporated, almost, be 3 years in March, I guess. So we run our tests, and so far we've found no issue. I don't think that it has a shelf life.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess I'm going back to the container. It's not so much the water itself.
Exactly.
It's, if there's any kind of time limit on how long the water can sit in that container.
Right. Yes. I think we have it at like 18 months, and that's because of the container.
And so temperature, for example, when it's shipped, it's not shipped refrigerated, it's shipped regular. So in the summer when temperature is hot in the trucks and everything, does it affects the water at all?
So we make sure that the water doesn't sit in any heated spaces. And so we're very aware of that as far as, when we package it at our plant, how it's transported, and then it gets to you. Of course, when it's delivered to you, then it's your responsibility. It's not, you wouldn't want to heat it up because, as we know, plastic is not best when it gets to high temperatures. And so, we do, and that's part of having that cardboard cover as well, helps protect it from the temperature.
From the sun, or sort of from
exactly.
UV rays.
Yeah. So, you wouldn't want to keep it in direct sunlight on a 100-degree day in your car.
Right. So is as clean as your water is. I know I'm a little picky on that. It's probably the best quality of water to make coffee or tea, right? Because it doesn't alter the taste at all, right?
Yes, that's what I think. It's what I make my bulletproof coffee out of.
Okay. All right. So before Mark jumps in, where can we find information about your products, your water? Sorry.
You can go to our website, which is risingspringsource.com. And we have a lot of information on there. And then, of course, you can purchase there. And then we're on Instagram as Rising Springs and Facebook as Rising Springs Source.
Mark?
Okay, it's been interesting actually. But I'm fully behind spring water. As you know, home for me is in Sospel in the south of France, and even our water that comes out the faucet is spring water.
That's amazing.
Totally,
You're so fortunate.
Totally untreated, and it's it's just nice to have that type of water. In the village itself, there's something like I think 28 or 30 different fountains that come from different sources. They've been there for hundreds of years.
I would love to visit.
You can visit. How can I put it? You can visit virtually if you want to. There's lots of films about Sospel that.
No, I want to visit non-virtually.
Yeah.
I want to try it.
Well, it's a southeast side of France, just slightly in the Pre-Alps, right?
Wow. It's in the Alps Maritime. It's one valley back from the coast, or 1.5 valley back from the coast, depending if you count the little one in the middle. But so the fountains there go back over 1,000 years. Some of them. Whether they go back 16,000 years, I couldn't say. So if the water is sort of 16,000 years old, obviously there's no contaminants, there's nothing in it whatsoever.
Nope, zero.
Do you know where it originally came from? Because I'm assuming water comes downhill before it comes back up again.
Well, so if you look at the geology of the Sawtooth Mountains, it's one of the, I think it is the largest contiguous forest in the United States. And it's got these incredible Sawtooth Mountains. And so the idea being that it fell as rain or snow 16,000 years ago, made its way down, through the earth to this aquifer where it collected and has been stored down there.
And you say it comes up hot?
It does, at 138 degrees.
Yeah. So has there been a sort of or is there a history of it being used by the people who were, in that place hundreds of years ago as a sort of a...
Yeah, we looked into that because that would be really interesting, and we didn't find information about native peoples and the spring and the history.
No hot springs bath or anything like this?
There's hot spring baths up the road from us. People can go and actually the hot springs travels off of our land because we only package less than 1% of what rises daily. And so a lot of it just travels and joins the river that's right there and then goes into a reservoir. It never becomes municipal drinking water. But where the hot springs meets the river, people build little pools and soak there, or you can go up and there's one huge, like Olympic sized pool that you can soak in. And it's amazing. It's a wonderful experience.
I mean, have you tried it yourself, or do you feel more buoyant and lively when you come out? The things I noticed about soaking in it is probably because of the high silica, but when I'm in the water, I don't feel, it's a little hard to say, but when I wave my arms below, I don't feel a difference between the water and my skin. It kind of feels like you're going through air, I guess would be. And then when I get out of the water, I don't immediately need to put lotion on. A lot of the waters that I soaked in, and I'm actually a huge fan of hot springs. And so I've been to a number of hot springs around the US and in Japan. And sometimes when they are have their hard water, immediately when I get out, I feel dried out. And so I need to moisturize. This water feels very nourishing and hydrating for the body. Excellent.
Historically, water, what's the word? I mean, since the Romans and the Greek, right?
Yeah.
Water treatment has been beneficial to the point where in France, Social Security pays for water to go to the water like Evian, Vitel, and all these sources to get better.
That's what I think is extraordinary. It's, Rising Springs, or this source, is the only water in the United States that's ever been certified by Germany as a natural healing water.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's Naturlichhalliwasser. Probably didn't say that right, but something close to that, which basically means a natural healing water.
Yeah.
And so, I think especially in Europe, it's more common, or it was in the past, and I don't know if it still is, but to go to the doctor and have somebody prescribe a certain water. Mm-hmm. Right? It was like, go to this spring for this, and of course, because they have different attributes. And I was actually at my doctor yesterday, my naturopath, and we have talked so many times over the years I've been seeing her, for 15 years, about what food I should eat. And never once have we had a conversation about the water I drink. And I mentioned that to her, and she was like, God, that's really fascinating. Like, I ask people if they have a filter, but it never goes back to that. And so Rising Springs is wonderful. I'm so grateful to be a steward of the source, but I'm also just really passionate about, separating out these natural spring waters, elevating them and celebrating them, the ones that we have in the US.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. There's a huge raft of scientific papers that show just how good alkaline waters are for us, even only slightly ones. And yours at 9 point. When you consider sort of pH neutral is what, 7.35 on the pH scale? Mm-hmm. So if you're at 9.4, did you say?
Mm-hmm. Yes, correct.
That's 100 times more alkaline then, as it's on a logarithmic scale. And when you look at the raft of scientific papers on that, it's a brilliant way of treating so many sort of health problems that people might have. Because as we know, the diseases really only occur in alkaline, anaerobic conditions. That's the conditions that they love. So if you can hydrate yourself with alkaline water, then you're going to kill two birds with one stone, as it were.
Right. Or that's what I believe.
Heal two birds with one.
Yes, exactly.
Actually, I saw a comment which I completely forgotten about it, but our body is made out of about 70% water.
Correct.
So it makes sense that we would make sure we fill or we refresh or replenish our body with as clean water as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we spend the groups that I'm with and the people that I know spend so much time on their food. Just organic, non-GMO, local, farm fresh, all of these, standards that we hold our food up to. And yet we are made of water, and so little thought, conversation, focus is put on the water we drink.
And I guess that the other thing that people often overlook is the fact that water is a great way of cleansing the body anyway. Mm-hmm. So if you've got an overload of toxins coming in through food and environment, to be able to flush that out with something that's not putting any crap in the first place is an ideal situation.
Exactly.
So how did you come up with this subscription model? This is changing tack slightly.
Well, we wanted to, we kind of looked, and it seemed like things in the US were going direct to consumer. A lot of people want to just receive the things to their doorstep. And, it kind of lightens that footprint to just send it direct from us to you instead of changing hands so many more times. And it also kind of, what we thought would be a simpler business model for us to run as this, just kind of not having to deal with distribution, which is a big thing in retail, having, distribution. And so going to just direct to the consumer. It was a little more challenging than we thought, just because in this day and age of so many options to communicate, and our story being not easily communicated in one sentence or a couple words, and the competition, like the word pure, which, I feel like we merit, a lot of people use who I don't think merit that word. So it gets confusing for the consumer, and understandably so. And so, some of the challenges have been to communicate our story, to differentiate ourselves, and also to get people familiar with receiving their water in this way. So, that is accessible on our website. And then we also felt like we needed to add in some retail access points as well. And
as a way to kind of introduce ourselves, and maybe people will find us there and go, onto our website and then look to get a subscription, or maybe they just feel more comfortable, buying retail.
Excellent. And of course, if you've cut out the middleman, there's no cases of water hanging around in someone's depot for months on end that they've forgotten about. Oh, we've got to get rid of those. They're getting close by date.
Yeah.
I think you've.
Yeah, we are responsible for the chain of custody, and that feels good.
Yeah, and I think you've made a very shrewd move there as well. You can make sure it goes out fresh, as it were.
Yes, exactly.
Typically, from the time it comes out the ground to the time it gets to the customer's kitchen table, how many days is that?
Oh, well, that would be a question for my production team. Right. I can't give you that, but I know that we have a lot of conversation about making that the shortest amount of time possible. And so because we're a small company still, we are only filling, like every couple of weeks, once a week. I'm actually not sure. But so we try and make sure that it's only with us for a few weeks, a month, and then it's 3 days to your door, basically from when we ship it. And so we are always being aware of making that the shortest time possible. And then you can do with it on your end what you like when it arrives to you. Some people like to decanter it into like a glass pedestaled water dispenser. Some people love the boxes and have them, in their office, in their car, multiple places.
Now, you mentioned something called the Water Keepers Alliance earlier. What is that?
Water Keepers Alliance is a water advocacy group that basically fights for the rights of water and uses the Clean Water Act to do that. And they are protecting waters and therefore fishable, swimmable, and drinkable waters for all. And so basically it's a grassroots organization where one person identifies a body of water, be it a lake, stream, river, creek, ocean, bay, and they become part of the Waterkeeper Alliance, and they advocate for that body of water. And what they do is they do a lot of testing of that water. They identify what might be contaminants in the water, and then they will use laws that are in place to fight whoever is doing the contaminating, get them to either change their ways or to be removed. And so we've been a part of launching Water Keepers in Oregon, in Idaho, in Hawaii, and in Costa Rica, where on the Nicoya Peninsula, where I was born.
Excellent. So it's quite a popular movement then for those people who sort of want to protect good, clean water.
Yes, it is, and it is one that I think is effective.
Where can we find out more about it, just out of interest?
Waterkeeper.org. I would just put Waterkeeper Alliance in your Google it, and it'll come up. And then they have a feature where you can put in, where you live or where you're curious about, so I could put in Ashland, Oregon, and the Rogue Riverkeeper would come up for me because they're the nearest riverkeeper to me. And then I can see how I can support them. And they've got a number of things from cleanup or planting riparian zones to just donating money to help fund their work.
Excellent. If I've understood it right from your preamble, you've been the custodians of this water source for about 5 years.
Yes.
Would you say having that responsibility and seeing the promise of what it can do has changed your life in any way?
Yes, absolutely. I've got goosebumps. I have become, we've done a lot of work with the Waterkeeper Alliance with various bodies of water, but to be so intimate with one source of water has really kind of lit this passion for me around single source waters. And to be able to, and I talk a lot about this when I talk to people and even before this podcast, I really sit and ask the water, please guide me. What would you like to communicate? What serves you best in the world? And, I really do feel led by this water source
not only to steward and protect it, but to be a advocate and a supporter of all clean waters, because there's this old adage that you can't clean dirty water. And no. It's true, you can't ever take a pristine source like Rising Springs. If you add contaminants in, you can never bring it back to that original purity. And so it's so important that the pure water we have left, we protect.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true indeed. So with that stewardship in mind, where do you see, I'm struggling to call it a business, it's more of a passion. Where do you see your passion taking you in 5 years' time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm currently studying to be a water sommelier with the Fine Water Academy Institute. And I'm just in the kind of beginning phases of that, but I hope to just have a much deeper understanding of water and about how the terroir, the minerals affect taste, how, how waters and spring waters differentiate. I feel like I need to do a lot more educating of myself. I really want to learn more about the scientific side as well, get deeper dive into alkalinity and deuterium depleted water and these different ideas of how these waters would affect our health and wellness. And then I don't know where I'll be in 5 years, but I really trust that kind of exploration and continuing to have conversations with fine gentlemen like you two and just different people in health and wellness will help kind of really initiate this conversation about water, And so the things that we really, what we've learned, what I think everybody should have access is what is your source? Where does your water come from? How has it been treated? What has been removed? What has been added? How is it packaged? And how does it get to you? And so that should be answered, from a bottled water standpoint, from a natural mineral supplement like us, and from, the plant that treats your tap water. We should all have access to that information. And it's super unclear right now, those answers. And from a lot of the sources, the brands of water that I think are pretty good, still it's unclear. I spent a lot of time online trying to figure out where exactly does that water come from? And it's very, it's the rain, or it's, from the mountains, but it doesn't really name. And then the science isn't there. And so we're in the final phases of wrapping up all the scientific testing we've done and making that available on our website so people have easy access to all of that information. And then we hope other brands will follow along. Because really, I think people should be drinking, some Rising Springs, some of this other springs, different spring sources to really round out their whole hydration regime and regimen, whichever one it is. I just get confused with the two regimes. Would be the best.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the custom in Europe that you don't drink the same bottle of water all the time. You change maybe once or twice a week. Oh yes, yeah.
I had no idea, and that's exactly how it should be. And I really want to help make that movement in the United States.
I mean, some bottled waters are rich in, as yours, in silica. Others are in, volcanic ash, what happens to be.
Exactly. So we need it all.
Yeah, indeedy. And it's absolutely certain that the water companies do lie to us about the quality of their water.
And some of them are the sticky water too. In Europe, there's sulfur sources. Where people go, right? Right?
You drink it under protest.
Yeah, we actually have, in the town that I live in, we have lithium water that comes up naturally from a spring. But man, it's hard to drink that water.
Yeah.
It's quite a flavor. And that's the thing is we've become accustomed to, we think water should be flavorless. Because that's what we've become accustomed to. And then we strip everything out and then we make it cold so we can't taste any of the impurities, or we add lemon so we can't taste any of the impurities. And then we think that's what water tastes like. So then when we drink some of these spring sources and they actually have a flavor, it can
be shocking to us because we think that means something's wrong with it because we think we've been trained to think it should be tasteless. And what I suggest is everybody drink their water at room temperature. And that's when you really know that drink it at room temperature. And also, I follow your body's instincts. I think your body will lead you to the certain kind of water that you need at that moment. And so if you have those options available to you in your house, then your body can choose for you, what you're needing.
One thing, I don't know about you, but one thing that drives me crazy is the smart waters. Right?
Yes.
If my water is smarter than me, then I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Does that mean dumb people buy smart water?
Yeah, I can't even go down this road.
Well, we try to stir up trouble here.
Yes, you are.
Yes. So it's flavored water and smart water. These two, the only way I flavor my water is I squeeze lemon in it. That's my flavoring.
Yeah, me too. I squeeze lemon in for the health benefits of the lemon. Not so much because I'm trying to change the taste of my water, but because I think it's, drinking lemon water is good. Yeah, it's so very strange to me that we pull it all out and then we add in artificial taste back in. Yeah.
It's exactly go back to what we said in the beginning. And the water business has become such a huge profit making. We pay more for a gallon of water than we pay for a gallon of gasoline. A lot more, right? Not to mention all the pollution that goes with it, the plastic bowls and everything. So, it's, on one hand, it's going in the right direction when you go from the soft drinks and the Coca-Colas and all these horrible drinks. On the other hand, a lot of people are still manipulating by the marketing of these waters, I think that the different water companies in this country are only owned for like 2-3 major brands.
Yep. Yeah, and they have a lot of money in their marketing campaigns. And so, there's been a number of events that I've wanted to be a part of just to get, some awareness. And they've wanted me to pay $150,000 for one day to be their water sponsor. But there's water companies that are paying it, and we can't, I wouldn't anyway, but we can't afford to.
Right.
And it is so confusing to me because it's business. And so, I have had a lot to learn in the business side of things. So I get people pay sponsorships, but I'm always like, but I'm giving you the most amazing water for your event to share with, 3,000 people or 250, whatever it is, and then you want me to pay $150,000 just to make sure that one of these huge corporate brands doesn't, come in and replace me. And they have at some of these events that I'm really blown away that these events would support these different water brands.
Mm.
Well, they're not supporting them. They're being
just
paid
taking the money.
to support them. Yeah, they're taking the money. If their heart was in the right place, they would not support this company. They would support you, but it's all about business, all about money.
Exactly.
So, whoever pays the highest fee gets the name on the football stadium, so to speak.
Right.
Right.
And then that makes it just so confusing for the consumer.
Yeah.
And, the water space is one of the most greenwashed spaces there is. You go and you look at, what's on a bottle and it'll be like gluten-free certificate or, and you're like, it's so hard to understand what's real. What's the real source? What's in it?
I think I've even seen a non-GMO stamp on water.
Yeah.
It's really? Do you think we're that stupid? But I guess so.
Fat-free.
Fat-free.
One of the first things we did was in the office, we had 30 water brands up, and we researched all the different claims that were being made. And it was super clear that, again, things like natural and pure and even spring meant nothing.
Yeah. So you have to, so how do you differentiate yourself from these marketed brands or marketed springs?
Yeah. Connection, trying to connect people to the source, to have them realize where this water is actually coming from, that it's a single source spring, is kind of the easiest, quickest way, because then they ask the question, well, where is the water I'm drinking coming from? What is it? And we have pictures of the source on our website. So really going to the website can help somebody understand, and then we just start the conversation of the purity, and what's in the water. But, it's a lot of educating at this moment. And when I can have a few minutes with somebody, that feels great. When I have 3 words on a Facebook ad.
Yeah. Well, I must say that your website is highly educative. I've learned more in, reading your website an hour than I've never known my whole life about water. That is.
Oh, wonderful.
Now I'm specialized in food, but water is definitely something I haven't really focused on at all. Mm-hmm. So and not only that, but you also give out all the chemical compositions and all that, which like you said, other water companies don't do that.
No, they don't.
Yeah, and then I'm really excited to layer on our scientific testing here soon, which will be just a much deeper way to understand. And once I think people see that, then they'll be asking themselves, questions about these other sources that they might be drinking.
Right. So get ready for a huge inflow of business.
We're ready.
You're ready.
We're ready.
Okay, can you give us your website again, please?
Yes, it's www.risingspringsource.com.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Super job. Okay. I think it's probably time for the close, Alain.
Right. Did you want to add anything, Nicoya?
No, I'm very grateful to you both for having this conversation with me today.
Absolutely, it's been very enlightening.
Yeah.
So would the crystal say? Okay, here's the closing. Thank you again, Nicoya, for being on the Low Carb Paleo show. And as we say in Texas, à votre santé, y'all.
A genuine laugh. Look at that.
I don't know. I didn't hear. It wasn't loud enough. I think we need to do it again. No. I'm joking. Also,